You're welcome back to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, and my guests are still here with me. And of course, the most important item on the discussion for which they are here particularly is what we are now going to deal with. And the EC's Acting Director, Public Affairs, joins us now, Christian Owusu-Parry. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Samson.
Great. Now, let's deal with the register, shall we? And you all must be aware that when we went into the contest of the 2012 elections, a lot of issues came out of that and led us to the Supreme Court, where the opposition sought to challenge the result. In the Supreme Court, a number of issues became very clear to all of us, including the justices, so that in the end, two of the justices gave some recommendations for some modifications or corrections to be made to the electoral system as a whole. Now, if you thought that the Supreme Court is the avenue to give a conclusive position on how to resolve an election dispute and not to get the country, in a state that is still shaky, then you may want to read the judgment of the court again. In the judgment of the court, as we know, some members of those who lost the election have given several interpretations, different interpretations to the judgment, including, for example, that it is unheard of that the word shall, which the Constitution makes mandatory, and the law we call interpretation law in this country makes mandatory, was turned to be not mandatory in the case of the election petition. So it does suggest that waiting to go to the Supreme Court to resolve our election problems may not be the best solution to do, and that the best solution will be for all of us to take our destiny into our own hands and ensure that the elections are held in an environment that gives all of us security and assurance that it is safe. Now, I would find out from Mr. Owusu-Parry briefly what they have done with the process of recommendations for changes to be made to the electoral roll. The EC itself set up a committee that was supposed to look into some of these proposals. They actually invited more proposals and received more, and they have been going over these proposals for the long period. Where are we with your examination of the proposals that were submitted to you? And I'm holding here that book in which you compiled all the proposals together.
Well, thank you very much, Samson, and good morning, or is it good afternoon to your viewers? Good morning to your viewers. Yes, Samson, insofar as I can remember, during the presidential election petition, the only recommendation that I remember was made about the register was from the presiding judge, Mr. Justice Atuguba, who proposed that the Electoral Commission should give the copies of the voters' register to the parties early enough so they can scrutinize and then make arrangement for any contingency, so that if there are any cases that are heard after the copies of the register have been given to the political parties, the Electoral Commission will make the extra information available to the parties. The Commission, after the presidential election petition, made a request for
the presiding judge made recommendations, and Justice Doshi also made recommendations for changes.
Right. What I remember is what the presiding judge actually said.
Okay. I'll share them with you shortly. Go ahead.
Right. And, after the hearing of the presidential election petition, the commission deemed it right to invite proposals for electoral reforms. We received a number of proposals from civil society, from political parties, from individuals, and we compiled all those proposals for we compiled all those proposals and made copies available to the political parties for them to study. And subsequently, the commission set up a committee to study the proposals that have been made and to bring recommendations to the commission for scrutiny and adoption where possible. The committee did its work and came out with a report that it submitted to the commission. The commission is studying the report. Indeed, it has actually made its position on some of the preliminary matters known to the political party representatives at the last IPAC meeting that we had. And from the many recommendations that the committee examined, the only one that the commission says it doesn't agree with the committee on is the issue of no verification, no vote, where the commission thinks that that is a denial of the right of the people to exercise their franchise. There are others which are mostly administrative in nature, where the commission says it accepts without any problems. It wholly accepts. There are others that the commission says, well, it accepts, but it will need to have further deliberation and dialogue with political parties to come to some firm agreement on those issues. Unfortunately, the register wasn't one of the issues that were considered, and so it is not in the recommendation submitted to the Electoral Commission by the Reforms Committee.
Interesting. Just before that, let me just share with you some of the electoral reforms recommended by their lordships, Justices Atuguba and Justice Jones Doche. And for those that were made by Justice Atuguba, there were 6 of them by my own count. And they are these. Number 1, the voters' register must be compiled and made available to the parties as early as possible. A supplementary register may cater for late exigencies. Number 2, the caliber of presiding officers must be greatly raised up. Number 3, the pink sheet is too elaborate. A much simpler one to meet the pressures of the public, weariness and lateness to the day at the close of poll. The carbon copying system has to be improved upon. The biometric device system must be streamlined to avoid breakdowns. And finally, breakdowns and the stress on the electorate involved in an adjournment of a poll. And the final one is that invalidating wholesale votes for insignificant excess numbers is not the best application of the administrative principle of the proportionality test. And you remember that on the last point, your position had been, which is the principle that guided the 2012 election, is that for as long as there were some number of votes that were tainted in a polling station, the entire vote had to be cancelled.
Yes.
Right. And the recommendation was that that is not right in the way, according to the proportionality principle. You're not doing anything about that?
Well, the issue of electoral reforms is not foreclosed. We can at any time look at any useful recommendation that is coming from any other body or group of persons that will help put in place a very smooth electoral process, one that is transparent and people will accept.
Okay. I hear Dr. Franklin Odro suggests that there's some recommendation to this effect.
Yeah.
What do you remember it to be?
Well,
you are a member of the
committee.
committee.
Both the three of us, Kwabena, General and myself, were all members of the committee. And I think we did make recommendations.
The recommendation in that respect is that where you find excess ballots in the ballot box, you have to try to isolate what you consider to be foreign ballot paper, and then if you are able to isolate it, then you will declare the rest of them as valid and count in favor of whoever was entitled to those votes.
Okay, that's obviously sounds to be a very fair process. But the basic ones, administrative, he says that the voters' register must be compiled and made available to the parties as early as possible. We had a problem with that the last time, and he says a supplementary register may cater for late exigencies.
Yeah, Samson, you see, as I said earlier on, the recommendations about the register, there are several recommendations that were made, and those are general recommendations for the whole of the electoral process. But regarding the register, he made basically two key points that give the copies of the register to the parties early enough.
Right.
And the Commission doesn't have anything against that proposal. It is in the interest of all of us that the parties get the register quite early. Indeed, the law actually says give them the copies of the provisional voters register. It doesn't even mention the final register. It says the provisional voters register. And I believe the framers of the law were considering the fact that the register is cleaned at the exhibition. So if they have the copy of the provisional voters register, then they are in position to scrutinize it. So when they go to the exhibition, they will be able to point out who is on the provisional register but ought not to be there. So, well, the Commission doesn't have
any problem with that. But it's beyond not having a problem with it. It is about making sure that it is done.
Yes.
Because as you say, the law says you ought to provide the provisional. And the last time, we had problems with that.
Except that, you see, sometimes the timetable for the preparation of the register is a bit short. Short in the sense that we are not able to compile the register early enough. Sometimes you are faced with some challenges, and with those kind of challenges, it is sometimes difficult.
And that's why, as I just heard Mr. Siedun Ketia and Franklin whisper, there was a call on you to set a particular time frame, and in fact, you should be doing it for the election year, so that we know in advance, not only the parties, but all of us know that the EC will be undertaking this project at this time, it will be doing this at this time, at this other time, and then we can hold you to stick to your timetable.
You see, the Commission will comply with the laws and make the copies available to them. If we are able to compile the register early enough, and the exhibition...
You don't say if you are able to.
Yes, but
you ought to.
No, I'm saying if we are able to, we are able to because it should, Samson, because sometimes you want to carry out an exercise, and we have to be funded, and so if releases of resources are not timely, and they come at a time when you have just a few months to do exhibition or even go for the elections, then you are somehow put under pressure to compile the register in a short time.
That's why it might be good for you to let the exchequer also know what your time frames are.
And that is why we say, let us not legislate the time for submission of those registers to political parties, but let us handle it administratively, so that if we have any constraints, we will be able to find a way around it.
Okay.
To say
I just wanted you to clear this basically quickly, and then we move on. But you are going to simplify the pink sheets?
Yes. Already the Electoral Reforms Committee did some work on the pink sheets. the declaration of results and the declaration of results form and the statement of poll. But the commission, after examining it, is of the opinion that what the committee proposed is a bit more complicated than even the one that we are trying to simplify.
Interesting. Interesting. Committee, you failed it.
No, we didn't fail. Except that, the committee was looking at providing some details that are not on the previous one, and that is what is adding to the work that the presiding officer has to do on the declaration of results forms and the statement of poll.
Okay,
So we are finding ways of making it much more simpler than we have now.
Okay, now Justice Jose had this to say: urgent reforms needed in our electoral processes and administration. He said, in the first place, it does appear to be that there is the need for the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, to consider legislation to legitimize the use of serialized pink sheets in just the same way as there are unique polling station codes.
You see, Samson, the declaration of results forms, the pink sheets, as they call it, have always had these serial numbers, except that when they are doing the distribution, they are done randomly, so that the serial numbers don't relate to a particular polling station, and that is what the justices are asking us to do, so that serial numbers relate to particular polling stations. And I believe that is also the recommendation that the Reforms Committee is making.
Okay, so this particular concern is to ensure that security features enhanced on the pink sheets to make them identifiable to a particular region, constituency, and polling station, just as it is with the polling station codes. Because there was a challenge of questions regarding problems with serial numbers and codes. And this was to ensure. And of course, Mr. Afarijan also gave an answer that Justice Doshe had a very scathing criticism to make about it.
No, in the opinion of the petitioners at the time, we had this two sets of pink sheets that were printed, and both went out at the same time. And so duplicate numbers went to some other polling stations. In the opinion of the petitioners, the fact that two different polling stations, regardless of how distant they may be apart, meant that the results related to the same polling station based on the serial numbers that they found on the declaration of results forms. Our argument was that we don't identify polling stations by serial numbers on any form at the polling station, and that polling stations are identified by the name and the codes. So if you found that there are two sets of pink sheets, one in, let's say, Efija Sechere, another in Kwabre, it doesn't mean that the results belong to the same polling station, but that is a recommendation that has been made by the Reform Committee, and the Commission is looking at it seriously.
Okay. Now, can I have any brief comment from any one of you about the processes towards enhancing and refining the system itself? And then we'll move on to the register, whether or not it should be amended.
Well, I am worried, you see, and even the delivery of our friend from the EC is worsening my fears. The attitude of the EC is too lethargic, is too laid back. We don't have all the time in the world to do this. The petition ended at the end of August last year. The report that you're holding, the collation, was put together, I believe, by the end of the year. It took them up to April for us to start the work at the Reforms Committee. At the Reforms Committee, we went through it because we knew of the urgency of the situation. By the end of the month, we had completed and sent our report to the Electoral Commission. So by the first week of May, they had full custody. We are in August. We talk about the calendar of the EC. I mean, we don't know what is happening. We haven't even met to start to look at the discussions and the implementations. And so I think that those are very critical things. The urgency that we attach to this whole process. And anything that we can do to rebuild confidence or to increase the comfort level of all stakeholders in this process is commendable and has to be done. So I think that we are in August. August is ending. According to the recommendations, we are likely to have the elections, if possible, in November. So the window is closing. It keeps closing and it's closing. So I think that EC should be up and doing. Let's get on with this process. And what can be implementable, let's implement, and then...
Mr. Secretary, do you share the view that it does appear that there's no sense of urgency as far as the EC is concerned in pushing forward these recommendations that you have given them?
Well, I'm told that whilst I was on leave, there was one meeting. I wasn't present, so I don't know how much work has been done so far. But at the committee level, we all expressed the hope that we would know the positions of EC as far as our recommendations are concerned and what we intend to do with the recommendations as a nation. So I think I will associate myself with the sentiments expressed by my colleague that we need to be up and doing so that we will know clearly which of the recommendations is possible, which is not, and if it is not, why not, and so on, so that we are also representing the electorate. We can get back to them and then know what to do and how to prepare for the 2016 elections.
Doc, you finished your work in 1 month, like Kwabena Japan says. You feel that the EC has been lethargic, as he says, in the process?
To a degree, yes. I think I also associate myself with Kwabena in general on this because...
Have you sent them reminders and urged them on to be fast about it?
Well, I mean, for me as a committee, I'm no longer a committee member, so
you are now...
So
the committee is dissolved.
It's dissolved.
You're not sending the reminder.
And that I think is behold on the Electoral Commission to begin to articulate what we recommend and what, and indeed they have. In fact, the last meeting that General was in, I wasn't there, but I got a briefing as well that the EC met, they identified some of those recommendations that they agreed in principle. There were others that they felt fell outside of their mandate, and there were others that they said, well, we agree, but we will have further conversation on them. And the one particular one that they rejected is the no verification,
no vote.
Now, to me, those that they accepted in principle, I think they should begin to at least let us know the implementation of those. There should be some time frame, action plan. Those that can be implemented before November 2016, those that probably will go beyond November 2016, so that all of us will appreciate and be involved in the implementation of
But does
this
it sit well with all the parties that there ought to be envy, no verification, no vote?
Well, you ask the parties, so I don't...
Yeah, essentially, all the parties were in agreement
Yes.
that no verification, no vote.
And the EC says no.
And the EC says no. And our position is that whenever there is discretion, it generates problems. So the thing to do is to limit discretion as much as possible in the system so that it does not generate controversy where people begin to apply discretion in a capricious manner. So that was what we are conscious of the implications of this no verification, no vote. The argument has been made by our colleagues from civil society. Interestingly, at the committee level, there was a division between the position of all political parties vis-a-vis the position of the civil society and the Electoral Commission. But we think that in pushing the argument about individuals' right to vote, we must also not forget about the right of the people who have voted already. If there is an opportunity for somebody, one person, in trying to reach out to ensure that one or two people who could not be verified would exercise their franchise. If there is an opportunity for the votes of the others who have been verified to be diluted, then it's like we are also infringing on the rights of people who have taken their decision already, who may be in majority, but you are stretching to allow one person, and that person comes, and then there is a dilution of the decision. So that is the position of the political parties.
Well, I mean, what is the essence of the BVD if we don't want to stick to it? I mean, we are spending money to bring it in. So if we think that we are not going to do it, then what's the point? So that's why I'm worried about the Electoral Commission. And I think that we thought that if they have a calendar and the register is ready early enough, and we do the exhibitions and people can go there and test and verify and be sure that it's been verified already, and you get there. I cannot understand, because then it is prone to abuse and use of discretion. You understand? And even your right to vote is not also absolute. Otherwise, you don't need to register then. Then everybody can go and vote. You have to register because there are processes. We recognize your right to vote, but there are processes that allows you to vote. And this BVD is part of those processes. So but these are things that quickly we should be sitting on it, reaching finality, instead of just saying that we don't disagree.
What do you say to this charge? And it's a serious one.
Yes,
I don't think you take it lightly.
Something I don't think that we're dragging our feet on these matters. Kabna was away from the last IPAC meeting. I don't know whether the person who represented him actually gave him a copy of the sheet that we circulated at the IPAC meeting, indicating what the commission says about the various proposals. And if he doesn't have a copy, I'll give him a copy.
I haven't said so, so please don't.
I'll give him a copy today.
Don't say so.
Kabna, allow me.
I think it's not right for you to make that point. I have a copy of it.
But Mr.
Okay,
Parry,
so at least you know. So at least you know that the commission.
The important thing here is not about circulating papers about anything.
That's right.
It's about what results have been achieved.
It is important that you give them the position of the commission. They go and study. This was at the last IPAC meeting. We're having another IPAC meeting.
And that took you how
next
long
week?
since the committee
We're
finished
having.
work?
Well, you know, you give a report to a commission. The commission has to take its time to study the report, to analyze the implications of everything that has been put in the report, and to say that this one, looking at the situation on the ground, this is implementable, this one we cannot implement. It doesn't happen in a day or two.
I'm sorry.
At least you will need about...
It should happen in a week.
I'm sorry, Mr. Parry, but you are talking
really.
as if the Electoral Commission was not represented. In fact, they had the majority, if I may say so, of members of this reform committee.
The commission
I was expecting that the commission
was represented. Nevertheless, the report is the report of the committee.
Then why put members of the senior members of the commission on the reform committee if they are not going to advance the position of the commission?
Others have to know. Others have to know what is contained in the report.
Now,
anyway.
gentlemen,
so at least in the next
shall we move on to the questions of the register, whether or not we should have a new one or we should not. On the 15th of September 2008, the chairman of the Electoral Commission announced on Joy FM that the voters' register was bloated, and he called on Ghanaians to help purge it before the December elections. This is what Dr. Kojo Afare-Gyan said, I quote, "If our population is indeed 22 million, then perhaps 13 million people on our register would be statistically unacceptable by world standards. If that is the case, then it may mean that there is something wrong with our register. Let me say that at the end of the day, the register is as good as the stakeholders are prepared to accept. If they think there is nothing wrong with the register, that is fine. If they think there is nothing wrong with the register, they bust the people. They sent the children. They invited the foreigners to come and participate in this. If they think that is okay, what else could we use? We have to use a register. That is the register that we will use." That is Dr. Kojo Afare-Gyan in 2008, September. Now, Nana Akufo-Addo speaking sometime earlier, later last year, says, according to our country's national census, half of the population of Ghana, including non-Ghanaians, is below the age of 21. In fact, the median age in Ghana is 20.8. And yet, the records show that 56.8% of that total national population found their names on the 2012 voters register. 56.8. This can only be bogus. In the whole of Africa, a continent with a young population, Ghana has the highest voters register as a percentage of the total population. Our checks show that nowhere in Africa, mark this, nowhere in Africa has a voter population of more than 50% of the total population. Has a voter population of more than 50% of the total population. For example, South Africa, 47.9%. Côte d'Ivoire, 27.45%. Kenya, 34.5%. Nigeria, emphasis, Nigeria, 41.7%. And Senegal, 41.5%. But here in Ghana, ours is 56.8%. This is even bigger than any register we ourselves have used in all previous elections in Ghana before 2012. Ask yourself why. That's the question Nana-Addo put. Ask yourself why. From where you stand, Doc, is there something wrong with our register?
Samson, let me begin by saying that a voter register is very fundamental to every election outcome. If you're going to an election and you have a flawed register, you should expect that the outcome probably will be contested or may not be credible. And therefore, when the issue of a voter register comes up, I think it needs to be discussed objectively. It needs to be discussed in a manner that collectively will find a way to clean it, to make it better for an election. But it's also important to recognize that there's no such a thing like a perfect voter register. It doesn't happen anyway. You aspire to close to perfect because it's a document of living and sometimes non-living people, because people pass on and the process of compiling it also open itself for abuse. Since 92, we've had problems with our voter. In fact, going to every election, the voter register has always been an issue. And going to 2012, we all made a decision to improve upon that. And if I recall, after the 2012 voter register, in fact, it was generally accepted that this was a better document than the previous ones. Why? Because first of all, it enabled to avoid multiple voting because of the verification devices. But I also noticed that whilst we agreed that this was a better document, there were some concerns that people expressed that if you look at our national population census data and you do a statistical analysis and compare to other societies, in fact, referring to what you just said about Nana-Addo. Then
on the back of the statistics that I've just read to you, this is still a better register.
Well, I'm just referring to what we all said in going 2012. In fact, it was a general consensus from all the parties, from civil society, that
after the experience and after being at the Electoral Commission and the things that came up relative to the register, where do you stand? Is the register flawed?
I can only say a register is flawed if you do a test of it. And there are better ways of analyzing and auditing voter registers. In fact, it's a scientifically, internationally accepted way of auditing voter registers.
You don't think the 2012 December votes and the election petition has provided a test of the register?
No, it's not scientific. What is the basis of that assumption that you make? I can only make a conclusion that this voter register is flawed or not if we're able to do an audit test of it to ensure or to verify the extent to which people who are in the register are not really entitled to be in the register. Until we do that, I think it's very difficult for me to answer directly to you whether we have a flaw.
Okay, I'll share with you some of the facts.
But please,
as far as the register is concerned, that came up in the court, and then you tell me whether you still
hold on. Let me just say a few things. It's also important to remember that going to 2025, I was at that IPAC meeting when Dr. Frejan showed us pictures of, clearly, you could see that these are minors in it. And so I wouldn't say that you can find some of these things in the register. But what I'm trying to say is that what efforts have we done as election management body to clean the register so that it becomes an acceptable document for all of us to use?
Okay.
So that's why I began by saying that there's no such thing as a perfect voter register.
So there may be a cleaning, but not necessarily a new register. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, that's an option.
Okay. Now, Mr. Seydou Nketia has said that the description I gave you, which is the call of the NPP that was made by Nanado, Mr. Seydou Nketia has said the call is totally baseless, and I'm quoting him. Yeah. The call is totally baseless. And he says Nanado, quote unquote, crucified statistics in the manner in which he made the comparisons, and more importantly, the fact that nowhere do you have the voter register containing about more than 50% of the national population, as Ghana has 56.8%. And within the sub-region, there's none like that. Why do you say he was his claim was totally baseless?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me also say that a credible voters register is crucial to the outcomes of any elections. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you are going to get a credible election out of a flawed voters register, you need a lot of other measures that could be put in place, like we did in 2008, when it was agreed that the voters register was flawed. Now, so we all went into the voters register registration in 2012, or the elections in 2008, agreeing that the voters register was flawed, including the Electoral Commission. So if you, the statement of the chairman of the Electoral Commission that has just been quoted with a lot of ifs. Now, it is because of that problem that I'm sure we all went for a better system of capturing the names. And that was why we resorted to biometric registration of our people, so that we're confident that at least everybody has a unique fingerprint. So it is not possible for one person to use the name of another person to vote. And so far, everything that has happened either in Supreme Court or elsewhere, nobody, absolutely nobody has been able to prove that somebody voted using another person's name. Again, we also realize that with the biometric system, everybody whose name is on the register at least represents a human being. Mm. Now, so as we approach the 2012 election, there was consensus that the register very credible. And when there was the issue about the adoption of a verification system, I was all over the place that, look, if you have a credible register that everybody believes in, and that everybody whose name is there has a unique fingerprint, you only need to improve the security at the polling station, and I think we would have an improved election. That argument was rejected, and then we went in for biometric equipment, whereby your fingerprint is verified before you cast a vote. And that adds to the security of the the elections. Now, after Supreme Court, and as I've told you, I thought you were going to quote the judges who said that, any judge who said that we should replace a voters register. When you were talking about the quotation, we listened, we never heard any quotation.
No, they did it. None made that recommendation.
I thought you began by saying that.
No, none made such a recommendation.
Very well. So it is clear that there was no recommendation for the nation to replace the existing voters register. That must be made absolutely clear. So if anybody is making a demand, and they have the right to make their demands, don't put it out there as if this is a directive from the Supreme Court. Now, I heard Nanado very clearly, and I tried to find out what is his basis of arriving at this 56.8%. And I got to know that he was using the population census figure of the country as captured in 2010 and was comparing it with a voters register that was captured in 2012. So I asked myself that if you take the population census figure of 2010, when the Statistical Service itself has indicated that the population growth of the country is about between 2.5 or 3% per annum. And then you just pick that figure without compounding it to get the estimated figure for 2012, with which you will be comparing the voters register figure of 2012. And you just draw that conclusion. You are crucifying statistics completely, because your underlying assumption will be that the nation stopped growing. There was no birth during the 2-year period. Nobody grew. All ages were held static. That is the only assumption you can start from before you arrive at this 56.8%. So I thought that it would have been better if they had done a more scientific analysis, like increasing the 2010 population figure by the growth rate to arrive at the 2011 population figure. And then with the 2011 population figure as a base, you also increase it by the same rate before you come to a denominator which you can use to work this percentage. And I'm sure if you did it, you will not get this 56.8% that Nanado was talking about. So it's completely flawed. Now, that aside, we, because of the complaint of the bloating in 2008, we all agreed that let's go for the best technology available to capture the names on the register. So we chose this biometric system. And then we were made to understand that the system can prevent people from registering twice. But then, one difficulty with the system is that it cannot determine the age of the person who does the thumb printing.
Certainly.
Yeah, so when we're going in there, everybody was made, all the political party representatives were made to understand that, look, it is our responsibility now to ensure that minors are not registered. In fact, whoever observed the registration process and the commentary that went on during the registration will not escape the conclusion that we could not live to that obligation. And after the registration, we met at IPAC, and the Electoral Commission actually showed us faces of persons who have been registered. And clearly, even though we are not their parents, you could see that there were, faces of people who look like under 18. So all of us in going into the election knew that we're dealing with a register with people whose ages might not be the 18 years. So if that is the conclusion again, then I would like to ask, on what basis are you now taking the strict over 18 group and then striking a percentage out of even a total population and saying that because of that we have a higher figure of 56.8%? It means that whatever figure you will be having will still include minors at that time. I'm sure you are following.
I am.
Then the third issue has to do with the source of these two figures. There's population census figure and then the voter registration figure. The census figure, apart from it being 2 years behind the 2012, and they still are using it as it is without any adjustment, was captured by a different state organization, that is the Statistical Service, under different conditions, with different methods, different technology. And we're all witnesses when at the close of the 2010 census, people were indicating that they never saw any census officers in whole villages, in whole communities, and so on. And even as we sit now, the members of the Electoral Reforms Committee, there are some people on that committee who never got counted in the 2010 population census that took place. And they admitted when we were doing the reform. So it tells you that there are problems with that figure, even if it is adjusted to the 2012. Now, take and of course, there was nothing like biometric and so on. There was nothing like registration agents by anybody. It was just one state organization sending officers to the field and reporting back what they have captured. Whether they've done all their work or not, there was nothing to verify it. Now, when you come to the figures that were captured by the Electoral Commission, we all went in, participated fully. Every political party, because of the high stakes, presented registration agents, and we sat through the process from A to Z. The equipment we used was equipment that is far, far better than any other equipment that could have been used by the Statistical Service. When you get figures out of that system, and you are a statistician, I want to hold the population, the voters register figures more credible than the population census figures you are comparing with. So you have a percentage. There's a denominator which is made up of population voters registration figures captured by Electoral Commission with biometric system. After the capture, the deduplication was also done with observers from political parties. Everything that is done about the cleaning of the register from A to Z involves all of us as political parties. And so if you are comparing population census figure that was captured in the circumstances that I have described, and you are holding that one as correct, and judging the the EC figure captured with the involvement and observation of everybody, as that is the one that is faulty, I don't think, then you come to the conclusion that you are putting statistics to a wrongful use. Now you come to the issue about the minors on the register. It was a rare issue. We discussed it against the laws that govern the registration and so on. And we all, including the Electoral Commission, agreed that that is an issue. And as we sit here, we do not have any better system of capturing a new register where you will not allow, where opportunity will not be created for more minors to get on the register. But the good thing about it is that if people, anybody who registered in 2012 and was 14 years old, by 2016, that person would have turned 18. And so it's like the age of the register itself corrects that defect. And if you judge the turnout for the registration, the limited registration in 2014, everybody was crying out that the exercise was poorly patronized. Do you know the reason? It was meant to capture those who have just turned 18. So if you were 16 in 2012, and you are in 2014 you are 18 and the register is open. If your name had been entered in 2012, there's no way you can get your name re-entered in 2014. And that explains why that limited registration exercise was poorly patronized. So I am saying that if our intention of correcting the register by deleting names of minors is the reason why we are going to do a new register, then rather we are going to open the opportunity for new minors to get on board. Because you go to the registration center now, and still there is no technology to correct, deter people who are under 18 to register.
Thank you very much.
So we are now going to register more minors.
Interesting points there by Johnson Sedun Ketia. What I'm going to do now is that I'll take a break. When we return, we'll hear from Kwabena Japan, we'll hear from the EC as represented by Owusu Pare himself. Polster Benepson is also on the line. Thank you very much for your time and patience. He will also assist us with some of the figures. But I'll be interested in finding out what happens, because we know that the projected population growth annually is supposed to be 2.5%. In that regard, we worked on a register, which is the 2008 register, which had 54.50%. And we worked on that because we said that was bloated, 54.50%. We said that was bloated, and we worked on it. In 2004, we had 49.50%. That was lower both in percentage and in numbers than the 2000, register itself. So how can we justify that the 2012 register is not wrong and that everything is clean with it? And Mr. Sedun Ketia also refers to the Supreme Court judges as not having said, as in make a statement, that the register needs to be tinkered with.
No, to be replaced.
To be replaced.
Yeah.
But if you read their judgments, what conclusion do you come to? One example, the petitioners, before the start of the process, applied for the original copies of the pink sheets. They needed that to prove the overvoting head of their claim and other things. They were denied. The court unanimously denied them the provision, saying that they had the duplicates to rely on. The court itself, by the time they finished the hearing and rendered a judgment, some of the judges, including those who voted against overvoting, said that they were unable to establish the point of overvoting because the pink sheets they were using were duplicates and were not clear enough and had all sorts of problems. Justice Doche voted for it partially and upheld it partially. His criticism was that if the court had acceded to the initial application for the original copies of the pink sheet, it could have helped clarify the question of overvoting. So the court itself contradicted itself in that regard. And the potential effect is that if the register had been provided, we may not have had the results that we had eventually. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. And we are likely to do an extra time because this is such an important issue and we need to exhausted properly on the show. The show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, welcome to the new world. Sasso Spray, fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985 and celebrating 30 years of solid partnership. Lipton Tea, that is your #1 tea brand all over the world. And Yum Vita, that is the delicious way to grow. Before I take Mr. Japon's pick on it, let's go to the phone lines to speak to Ben Efson. Ben Efson is a pollster, and you know him. He's been doing a lot of work in this regard. And we want him to deal with some of the numbers as far as the register is concerned. Ben Efson, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to your panelists and listeners.
Once again, thank you for your patience. What is your take on the 2012 electoral roll?
Thank you, sir. So I'll try and make a complex issue as simple as possible.
Great.
Those who say it is bloated, they do so on this basis. The 2000 census said that Ghanaians above 18 years were 50% of the population. So they take the 2010 census figure of 25 million, divide it by 2, and get 12.5 million above 18 years. Then they take the 2012 voters register of a little over 14 million and subtract, and they say the voter population is voted by 1.5 million. I disagree, and I'll show how. And briefly, I also show how the cure or the
Hello, Ben. Hello, did I lose? Yes, good. I lost you a bit. Please continue. You said you are going to show why it is not bloated.
Yes. Those who say it's bloated by at least 1.5 million, the 2000 population census stated that Ghanaians above 18 years were 50%. So they take the 2010 population figure of 25 million and divide it by 2. That is, we have about 12.5 million Ghanaians above 18 years. Then they take the 2012 voter population of a little over 14 million. When you subtract, you get a little over 1.5 million. Now, the 2010 census gives those above 18 years at 55.28%, not 50%. Now, with 25 million at 2010, to get the 2012 estimated population using 2.5% growth rate, you would get 25.97 million as at 2012. That's almost 26 million. If you take 55.28% of 26 million, you get 14.34 million. So you can see that it will be nearly 97.9% of the registered population that are captured. I will agree when one says that getting nearly 98% of registered population is a bit high, is not bloated. Now, one reason why I don't think a new register will cure the problem is that the biometric system cannot identify by fingerprint those who are minors. Already, as you and I speak, about 70,000 people will not vote because of double registration. If the new voters register, something is opened, nothing will prevent minors from registering. I don't think having a new register is the key to 2016. Something the key to effective elections is having well-educated polling agents. The issue of overvoting comes about when you add the figures by the candidates, and you will see on the pink sheet that it will be in excess of the maximum number of registered voters. What if there's a constituency with 95,000 voters and 70,000 turn out to vote? You cannot have overvoting if the person is a sensible thief. He will manipulate the pink sheet, for example, to add 20 more thousand. So once you total the figures by the candidates, you will be below the 95,000. There will be no excess. But if we have a diligent, sensible, and a bit well-educated polling agent, that can be prevented. That's some summary, and I can take questions from you, Samson.
One key question to ask is why you think that if we had to do a new register, you could not prevent minors from registering?
Where were the polling agents when in 2012 when the voters are opened minors register?
So we are extra vigilant now. Is that not the case?
Or even Woolensey. If you are the agent, letter officer registering, the person comes and you ask the letter officer, are you 18? And the person says, my father said I'm 18. He's afraid. It is up to the polling agent to prevent it. That if we have limited resources, we also need to bear in mind that the donor community financing, the percentage of them financing our elections is getting smaller. The political parties already struggling for cash can use that money to train polling agents as and when the voter register is opened.
Does it also not make a difference, Benefsin, that previously you could use your NHIA card to register? That has been struck out by the court via Abu Ramadan and Mr. Danswe Champon's suit in court. Does that not also make a difference, at least to remove foreigners who had the opportunity of using that to register from the register?
Well, two things I have there. What is the guarantee that the foreigners who register for a particular party? How do you know that those who registered did so because they were foreigners? Maybe the voter ID card is the only form of identity you have. Many have a Ghana card identity. Many have a passport. And many people have been using their health insurance identity as a form of opening bank accounts and registering. I believe the Supreme Court may not have done a retrospective effect that try and take everybody out. But I'm saying that something, if even we have a new register and the political parties do not have polling agents, even when the voters register is reopened for those who have attained 18 years and those who have not hit to register, like that mixing stand with Agari.
Okay, thank you very much, Benefsin, for your time. That's a very instructive input coming from you. Now let's hear from the major proponent for the new register, and they have the support of the CPP and other minority parties. Why should we have a new register?
Well, I think we are very firm in our belief that the register as it stands now is incurably flawed and cannot be relied on for 2016. And I think having a fresh registration exercise, and I'm sure something you said it, with the public education that happened during the 8 months of the petition, the historic petition, a lot more public awareness abound in the country now. And I think the major issues of minors and foreigners who are not supposed to take part in this process, the awareness is there. And so therefore I think the inhibition will be higher this time round, number one. Again, when Asiedun Ketia took a swipe at our presidential candidate, I think it was totally unwarranted. I mean, of course, he likes making political statements and pour out political heat. Because in a nutshell, what he said conforms to what Benefsin has said, which means they don't have faith in what that state agency, the Ghana Statistical Service, did. That's number one. This is a state agency that used public resources to carry out a major exercise. We are now saying that that was very much flawed. And I guess I want to correct an erroneous impression that Nanado was basing his facts or his statement on figures that he had not projected. That is not right. And in fact, coming Tuesday, Dr. Baumia, who heads the committee that looked at the elections, and he'll make a presentation that will satisfy you, Dr. Odro, that will scientifically make it clear or illustrate to the people why we think that the statistics and the numbers do not add up. Okay? Because in certain parts of the country, in certain districts, the potentially registrable population according to the census, even adjusted by your growth rates, much smaller than what is registered by the Electoral Commission. At the end of the day, all of us believe that, in fact, if you look at the the Afrobarometer survey, the confidence that you did it, the confidence that people have in the electoral process has waned. Anything that we can do as a nation to improve the comfort level and for people to feel that we're having a clean break from the past, we have to do. And now we have a new chairperson at the Electoral Commission. I think there should be a dawn of a new era. We should start afresh. All of us as political parties, train our agents and ensure that the leakages that we've seen in the past, we can basically improve. Because you see, we are talking about no verification, no vote, and the Electoral Commission is not on stream with the political parties. The evidence abounds that in quite a number of places, the machine was not used at all. That is also a fact. You understand? And then something referred to the NHIA Supreme Court judgment. And yes, whilst we know that laws are not in retrospect, but in going forward, the Electoral Commission has never given flesh to this judgment as to what they intend to do about it. Are they telling us that they don't know those who registered with the NHIA card? I know that it will be a difficult exercise, but I think they have the records. That will show, because when you are filling the primary form, the form of identification that you use will be captured. The Supreme Court has been very clear that they were wrong in admitting that, because foreigners can use the card. Any foreigner who is working here for 3, 4, 5 months can procure an insurance card. So it is not a proof of your citizenship. So the EC was wrong. Of course, the potential registrant was not. And so therefore, you don't want to disenfranchise that person. That can be cured when he's given a fresh opportunity to go and register. And so for me, I think these calls are coming not only from some of the political parties, civil society, and other well-meaning leaders. How the NDC feels ill at ease with it, only they would know. But I want to state for a fact that I think it was unwarranted, the attack that the General Secretary mounted on our presidential candidate. And so when we resort to this kind of politicking, it poisons the atmosphere when we have such a serious matter for us to discuss. Because it was founded on statistics. And you've quoted from what the former Electoral Commission, the previous electoral chairman of the commission said. So that same argument about something wrong with that register can be extended to the 2012 one. And of course, that was the first time we're using the biometric verification device. So we have a lot more experience, I believe, this time round in its use, because the frequent breakdowns, the little investigation that I conducted, I think it was in the use of it. People were not trained properly in the use of it, which is when they have to take out the batteries and replace, and that they allowed the whole thing to run down, and it was very difficult to reboot. And now I think the Electoral Commission is even saying that they are going to provide a backup in each polling station. That's what they have agreed. And so I think that it is important that as a country, we have a break from the past. Let's do it afresh. And in any case, we're talking about money, yes. But even when you are doing, what do you call exhibition, it's the same human beings you are deploying, it's the same machines you're going to deploy. Of course, for a fresh registration, a bigger magnitude. But I don't think that exercise will cost much more than just doing.
Okay. Gabi Asare Chiridako has a comment I would want your view on shortly. But I want you to hold on briefly for me. Yeah. I want to ask the Electoral Commission, going by the Talensi by-election, we had 39,000 registered. Imagine the activity that happened in that constituency. Yet the total that voted was 23,000. What does it say? Does it tell you of a certain bloat of the voters register? 39,000 registered.
No,
and in a by-election that was so concentrated, you had 29,000 voting.
No, Samson, you get it all wrong. You see, the evidence with by-elections are that by-elections are never as competitive as general elections. Turnout at by-elections come nowhere near presidential and parliamentary elections. So if you're basing your argument on the fact that out of the 39,000 registered, only 23,000 turn out, and you use that as a basis of saying that the register might be bloated, you will be wrong, because records from all by-elections show that the turnout has always been low.
Thank you. Now, this is, there are various other questions, but that have to do with other matters of electoral reform. I think we will need time with the EC and put them to you. I have very important, nice questions from very well-meaning people.
But there are issues raised, raised by Kwabena which ought to be addressed with the minimum time that is available.
No, we have time. Kwabena was speaking earlier, and I stopped him because he had not exhausted his time. And this is what Barima Osei Asare sent. He says, Ben Efson, in an interview with ETV in 2012, just at the end of the registration, when EC reported a provisional figure of 13 million, said, quote, if 4 years back we had almost 12.5 million voters registering, a million plus should take us to almost 13.7 million. So clearly, it tells you the figures were bloated. Also, provisional results from the GSS indicated that Ghana was about 25 million as at 2010, meaning that half the population are about 18 years. So we should be getting about 12.5 million voters. So the 13 million is even beyond what people expect. What do you say to that? No, I'm asking Kwabena.
I think what is important is it's quite clear. If you do a scientific analysis of the Statistical Service reports and then what the Electoral Commission captured, it's quite clear that statistically there's a lot wrong. Okay? I think what the NDC, through its General Secretary and Ben Efson, are saying in a nutshell is that exercise we should throw away. We cannot use as a basis for anything. That's what they are saying. And which is very difficult to accept, because this is a serious state institution that carried out its mandate. And that's why I disagree with a lot of what Asiri Nketia said in his attack on our flag bearer. Because if you did the mathematics and you worked out the projections, you still get to the point where the population, the percentage of our population that is on the register is totally out of sync, even with our own past record. And then when you compare it to the other countries around us, there's a problem with it. Okay? And there are many things. I mean, the Electoral Commission itself, there's a little bit of confusion as to the total, the actual total amount on the register, whether it is final or provisional, as we saw.
Yeah.
The cumulative or what was gazetted for the parliamentary election, the gap between that and the presidential election as gazetted, you know. And when the Electoral Commission tried to explain that by saying that they could attribute it to foreign votes, when they were put to the test in court, they could hardly answer that. So I am clear in my mind that this register is incurably flawed and something ought to be done about it.
Okay.
I think that it doesn't inure to any party's
right.
particular benefit. I mean, if you want to have a fresh register, it doesn't mean it's MPP that's going to benefit from it. It means that all of us have to take the measures that will ensure that the minors are not there. But that interesting suggestion about the minors, that the 4 years would have that's a very interesting. It's a very. I have to accept that.
Sorry, I'm taking a break here.
Very, very interesting.
I'm taking a break here. When we return, I'll find out from Johnson if he has heard any compelling reasons that makes him want to change his position that the register ought not be changed. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is still your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile, and we're doing some 10 minutes additional time to see if we can exhaust a few of the other issues that are outstanding as far as the voters register is concerned. We hope that in the end, you can make up your minds in your homes and wherever you are listening to us from, whether or not you think that the demand for a new register is justified. Okay, you have already made a lot of notes on the card and other things. So let's hear what your reactions are.
Thank you very much. Listening to Kwabena, it reinforces my belief that the register is credible, and indeed they have nothing against the register, because all the arguments I have heard, none is compelling enough to warrant the replacement of the
MPP is not alone.
For instance, it doesn't matter the number of people who will be talking on radio. It doesn't change the facts.
Okay.
So let's look at the facts.
We're interrogating the facts.
While you lose the argument, you want to go around to get many people to be singing the same story, so it gives you credibility. In this particular case, the facts are there and they are verifiable. Number one, Kwabena makes the point that we are saying we don't have faith in statistical service figures. I thought that Dr. Bawumia began this one. In all the Dr. Bawumia lectures, he kept saying that statistical service have been cooking figures left, right, center. So, and interestingly, he also admits that this document was prepared by Dr. Bawumia, and that the same Dr. Bawumia is now going to give another lecture that would, explain things further, to then also uphold the same statistical service figures he has questioned over the years.
Let's hear him when he does. He can't lie about the facts.
But he will be talking about statistical service figures that come from population census. And the same math cannot be saying that statistical service has been cooking figures, their figures are not reliable, and then when it comes to another occasion, the same math will say that the statistical service
Please proceed to the next item.
Then the next item, we are talking about the NHIA card. You see, the law at that time provided for certain means of identifying yourself as a Ghanaian. It included driving license, I believe, passport, and many other things. So the NHIA was one of about 4 or 5 options which the voter could use to identify himself. The fact that somebody used NHIA card is not conclusive proof that the person didn't have a driving license or a passport or any other thing. So even if you go into the register and you are able to determine those who used NHIA card to register, that is not the conclusion. You need to line them up and ask them whether they don't have any of the other 4. Because it was an option that a legal option.
Whatever it is, there must have been a reason why the Supreme Court struck out that.
Yes, the Supreme Court says that the law as it is now, the card as it is now, cannot be used. It didn't say that go back and
because it is open to abuse.
Yes, our passports are for sale elsewhere. The driver's license, the birth certificates, and all these things. The same thing they are saying about this thing. It's applicable to almost all the means of identification. So now, but the more interesting thing is that the very first means of identifying a voter is the possession of an old voters card.
Yes.
So everybody who registered in 2012 and whose name is on this
Now
register,
has a voter's
whether
register.
they use passport or birth certificate or anything, has a card.
Okay.
So if you are going to capture a new register and they come and present their card, how are you going to know that this one originally registered with NHIA card, and then be able to question the person whether he had any other means of registering at that time and he didn't use? So that one, that one, going to do the register again would include all the people who registered. And the laws of Ghana do not have retroactive application. It is not as if at the time the register was being captured in 2012. The Supreme Court
was clear about that, so let's not go there again.
So why?
To your point
but you are asking us to do retroactive.
I asked you a question. I didn't ask for a retroactive
their demand is asking that we should go back to apply the law retroactively, because the law at that time allowed the NHIA
said that you couldn't apply the law retroactively.
Very well. Now, Kwabena is saying that there were cases when we went to Supreme Court. It came out that there were polling stations where the machine could not be used at all. I'm challenging him to that, to prove it, because they were given all the opportunity available in the world to come and prove where people voted without verification, and they were not able to prove in a single case. And indeed, we asked that they should allow the Electoral Commission to tender in the printouts of the biometric verification machines, so that will be a conclusive proof about the number of people who were verified. And then you can compare it with the figures on the pink sheets and know where the truth lied. MPP, which believed in deed verification and who themselves were making the case that people voted without verification, I thought that that was a better opportunity for them to allow for the tendering in of those printouts so they can prove their case. They took a position.
We have 5 minutes of the 10
They
minutes
took a
we
position
have, so
against it and then succeeded in preventing the printout from being laid in court. So I don't know how they come by this conclusion that people voted without the verification machine. EC chairman's statement, Dr. Farijan's statement was about the 208 register. It was manually captured, and the population census figure he was referring to, in 2008. The last time the population census figure was captured was somewhere in 2000 or so. So all the others were estimates. Let's come to the confidence in the electoral process. It is true that CDD brought figures to demonstrate that confidence in the electoral process has waned. But why not? If there is a political party that takes a position of weakening state institutions with a deliberate campaign, that is not based on facts. Why wouldn't you come to that conclusion?
How do you answer to this? How do you answer to this? The Electoral Commission says...
If that confidence is weak, the solution is for more public education.
Thank you.
About the process for them to explain what the process is.
There's no need to tinker with the register. There's no need to have a new register. The EC has publicly announced through the Commissioner herself that you are considering that application to have a new register.
It's considered proposals. We have sent our proposals and they have sent theirs.
What the new chairperson said is that...
I have a statement here. Yeah, go on.
What the new chairperson said is that she is looking at all the arguments that are being made and the pros and cons of the argument, and that the commission will analyze all the positions and arguments that people are making about the register, and when they have done a critical analysis of all those issues, the commission will take a decision as to whether the register needs to be replaced or it is not necessary to replace
that
it.
Proposal,
so she didn't make any
gives the impression out there that the EC has a feeling that the register could be subject to review or a new one.
Well, the position is that
listen to all of us.
A register has been compiled. People are having misgivings about the register, and they are putting forth some argument as a body that supervises election, and you want to have a very credible process. you need to be transparent, so you give everybody the chance to say what he thinks about the register. And then
we have 3 minutes to go. She says, we have 3 minutes to go. She says that you are considering, more importantly, the cost involved.
No.
All other issues will come into play. Not just cost, we'll also be thinking about timing, and time could be a constraint. So apart from talking about
time could be a constraint. It's too late to think about a new register.
No, I'm not saying it's too late. I'm not saying it's too late. I am talking about the fact that if you have to decide whether or not you're replacing the register, there are a lot of things to take into consideration.
And it's too late in the day.
I am not saying that.
You just said time could be a constraint.
Time could be a constraint because the decision is yet to be made.
Okay.
You remember when
the decision is yet to be made. But I didn't land on the earlier point that I was making.
You can't all land because we are wrapping up. So everybody should have at least a minute.
You remember when I said I was very worried about the posture of the EC? They are being lethargic, and now he's let the cat out of the bag. I'm sure that if we don't push them hard enough for us to have a meeting and show the urgency that we all need. You see, this electoral process is about building confidence, and it's not what Asare Nketia is saying, that one political party has made it our political campaign. They have destroyed more state institutions than any other political party by attacking various sectors.
So we are balancing out.
No, we are not balancing out anything. All we are trying to say is, it's very clear. Most political parties, civil society organizations, any step that we can take to generate more confidence in this process, we have to do. And we believe having a fresh register so that we can go away with the baggage of the Afarijan era. And so we can give ourselves a clean break and start. I think that is useful. Okay. And the fact that the Electoral Commission, the posture of the new chairperson is very positive. Okay. And I don't think they should try to demean it by being essentially political.
I think, given the time, do you think it's even feasible?
Well, first of all, I won't get into the time matter because I'm not an election management person.
But I think it is.
I think one of the most important things that we have embedded in the electoral system is confidence and trust at every stage. I think going to 2016, it is important that we don't raise flags. We don't begin to raise issues that will undermine the integrity.
If they are genuine issues?
What I'm saying, so because of those things, it is important for the EMB, political parties, the stakeholders to meet to discuss whether there's a need for a new register or if there are better ways of auditing or cleaning the register so that it becomes an acceptable document.
What's your position? Auditing or a new register?
I think that we should consider all options. If we have time, if we have resources, and it's in the interest of political parties, all of us, to have a new register, maybe we should explore. But if we don't have
civil society, you should be guiding by a public discourse. You should say there is a need for one or there is not.
Well, because I said before that I can only say the register is flawed if there's a basis for me to know.
Right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been great having you. Johnson Asare Nketia is a General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. Kwabena Ejapong is the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. Usu Pari is the acting public relations, public affairs.
You've been acting for too long.
You're still acting.
Public affairs.
You're not acting.
I'm still active.
Okay.
No.
Public Affairs Directorate of the Electoral Commission, and Dr. Franklin Odro is with the CDD. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to the studio. Have a good afternoon.